Planning Board. It's a couple minutes after 7 o'clock. We have a fairly packed agenda tonight. We have the continued public hearing for 654 Asbury Street Medical Marijuana Facility Site Plan Review.
They drown them. Sorry.
We have abbreviated stormwater management permit for 577, for 47 Winthrop Street tonight. We have a master planning update on our residential forum for April 29th. We have Sam Cleaves here from MAPC to discuss natural hazard mitigation plan. We'll be reviewing and signing a decision for a subdivision and minutes and other board business. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Bill Wheaton to the Planning Board, who was just voted in about a week and a half ago. So welcome, Bill. You were here in the early 90s as well, I believe, right? Yep. Great. So yeah, first up is the continued public hearing for 654 Asbury Street Medical Marijuana Facility. So Patrick, you just want to give us a quick update of where we're at and what's been going on in the last couple of weeks?
We have just for the folks at home, we have a site plan review application for a medical marijuana facility that's proposed at 654 Asbury Street. The project has been reviewed in a conceptual way and with the Board of Selectmen, Town Council, and the interim town manager last summer. They executed what's known as a host community agreement I guess it was the latter part of August. Since that time, the applicant has advanced the project with the state, also advanced it with us. As I'd mentioned, they have made application for site plan review. This is for a sizable project. I think the building's about 60,000 square feet on land that's essentially where the Green Meadows Farm formerly was. People would recall it had quite a grow operation. A lot of folks enjoyed the fresh vegetables from it. I know that as well. We have a peer review engineering planning company that's working with us. They're called the Beta Group. They're being paid for by the applicant entirely at their expense. That was part of the host community agreement. That's also part of Mass General Law as a requirement that local resources not be used for that, but applicants pay for these extra services. What will be discussed tonight is largely traffic. I think that Kevin's going to be talking a little bit about scheduling of the project, reviews, and other elements that they've been working on. But largely the focus tonight is on traffic.
Thank you, Patrick.
And Patrick, stormwater permit as well.
Yeah, I thank you, Kevin. Another element of the planning board's review is that this board needs to review the stormwater management special permit application. Is a very important element of it. This is a recharge area in the community, very close to the Ipswich River, so that's one of the important elements that the applicants focused on, as is our review process as well.
Thank you. Bob?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm Bob Patton. I'll just be quick because I know there are other people are on the docket tonight. Of course, grateful to be invited. I congratulate the returned member. Congratulations on winning, and I should say maybe God help you, but I won't say that. But at any rate, I did distribute a letter through Chairman Stein to the board. I wrote it myself. I'm not an attorney. Just wanting to clarify the fundamental nature of my vision, my family's vision, our vision for this, which is as a greenhouse with in quite a rare, in terms of they're coming on nationally, they're coming on in Massachusetts, but they're very, very rare, these translucent roofed greenhouses which use sunlight as their main lighting source for the plants, and electricity through lighting is purely supplementary, and that reverberates through the entire building in terms of our systems and our ethics. That's the fundamental organic element of what we're trying to do, and we think that that same ethos is all the way through it, but that's just, I wanted to explain that that's a really important distinction in any consideration of the operation of these kinds of cultivation facilities, that we are a translucent topped greenhouse, and those are still very rare. It's a tried and true technology, but very rare. I don't think any, frankly, are operational. I think 4 are in process of being built in Massachusetts right now, but I don't think any are up and running. So enough said from me. I want to hand it to the experts. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin McGarry. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm a project manager at Fuss & O'Neill. Point of clarification, the colored renderings that you're going to see up on the screen today are the same renderings from the last presentation. We have submitted one new plan. It's an updated color rendering, which was a question that came up at the last hearing. Excuse me, we provided Patrick with a couple hard copies, but I will show that as I get to it. That's sort of the only new plan document that's going to be introduced tonight. Since the last hearing, we presented to ZBA. We've been coordinating with the Ipswich Watershed Association. We've been coordinating with the Beta Group, providing them some supplemental information related to traffic, which I'm going to go over with you guys. And then we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow morning with the police chief to go over the security plan. What I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to kind of explain supplemental information that's been provided from to Beta for traffic, go over some of the other stuff that we're working on in the background and going to be submitting to the board in the near future. And then obviously we're here if you guys have any questions. From a traffic standpoint, at Beta's request, we resubmitted some data. So we gave them the raw, what's called automatic traffic recorder data, the counts that we did on Asbury Street. And we also gave them some more detail on how exactly we calculated our parking demand and our trip generation demand. There was also a question about non-employee trips to the site. So the non-employee trips to the site that we anticipate are basically shipments and deliveries. On the shipment side of things, product will typically be shipped off the site to off-site dispensaries for sale about once a week. Again, depending on the time of year, if the dispensaries are running low, there may be a second shipment, but we're really anticipating it to be about once a week during normal operation hours, and that would be in like a Dodge Sprinter, one of those larger delivery vans, not necessarily a box truck. Those are the shipments that are going to be leaving the site on a regular basis. From a delivery standpoint, we sort of identified 3 different types of deliveries. There's the administrative office supply deliveries, WB Mason, FedEx, those kind of deliveries. Those will, again, be as needed once or twice a week, again, during normal working hours in the standard vehicles that you would expect those delivery companies to deliver in, UPS truck, FedEx truck, the WB Mason truck. We'll also be having agricultural supply deliveries. Those will likely be in larger box trucks, and we did some detailed turning movements to show that a 30-foot box truck can easily navigate in and out of the site without any issues. Those are expected to occur approximately once to twice per month, again, depending on what cycle of the grow that the facility is in. And as previously mentioned, the water reclaim system in the building does have the ability to be filled from an outside source. So depending on weather conditions, if required, deliveries could occur for water from an off-site source. The third type of delivery that we anticipate for the site would be on a much more rare basis, and that would be like an equipment delivery. If for some reason a piece of equipment in the facility goes down or needs to be replaced, those deliveries could, depending on what the equipment is, they could show up in a pickup truck, they could show up in a box truck, they could show up in a tractor trailer truck. But again, very, very infrequent. I don't even want to say it would be once a year. And again, we provided Beta with some turning movements to both show that tractor trailer trucks can get in and out of our site as well as navigate our loading dock. There was another question that came up about sort of the hours of operation. So again, per the HCA, The hours of operation for the facility are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. In terms of when the employees will arrive, it's not a very strict system. What we provided to Beta is just a hypothetical example. So again, 50 employees between the hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So 5 people may work 7 to 3, and then you might have like 30 people, the majority, working that 9 to 5 shift, and then tapering off with 10 people working 10 to 6, 5 people working 2 to 8. So it's kind of going to be staggered throughout that maximum operating window. And I know Jeff's going to get up and speak to traffic a little bit more later. Is there any questions on the traffic portions before I kind of go to my next topic? Question? Okay. Based on comments from ZBA as well as the Ipswich River, we were asked to sort of go back and look at if there were any ways to reduce the amount of impervious area that we have on the site, and again, kind of played into looking at deliveries. This large loading dock up here on the western edge of the property was designed to accommodate so a large tractor trailer truck can kind of come into the site, pull up, back into the loading dock, and then turn around and leave. What we did is, again, and this was in the supplemental information we provided to Beta, we showed the turning movements of the box truck that we anticipate to be doing a delivery once to twice a month. And we showed the limits of turning for that tractor trailer truck. And what we're planning on doing is eliminating some of the pavement here in that the western loading dock to install enough pavement to accommodate the turning movements of that 30-foot box truck. And we're going to do a crushed gravel to accommodate the turning movements of that larger tractor trailer truck that is expected to be much less frequent. And that, again, that was sort of at the request of both the Ipswich River Watershed and ZBA, because we are in front of them because of the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, to reduce the amount of impervious surfaces that will be on the facility. The other, and that is approximately 5,000 square feet, and we're planning on making that change in conjunction with the stormwater and site plan review comments that we get from Beta. The other reduction that we were looking at is we were looking to reduce this size of this parking lot by approximately 10 spaces. It's currently 57 spaces, so we would be reducing it down to 47 spaces for our 50 employees. We would also be able to utilize that loading dock as overflow parking. Again, there's sort of a lot of impervious area up there for that delivery truck. If it comes twice a month, you know, that area can really be reutilized more efficiently for overflow parking if needed. And again, because the facility all operates, if there was an issue where there was a delivery coming in, obviously they can reach out to the employees who are parked there and get them to relocate their cars if needed. And that would be, again, approximately a 2,500 square foot reduction in impervious. So 7,500 square feet of impervious that we're looking to reduce in total. We just felt that we wanted to present that to the planning board. I don't know if you guys have any objections to the reduction in parking. I know that's obviously part of the site plan review. So we just wanted to kind of throw that out there as something we were looking at and hear what the planning board's thoughts were. Other things that we're sort of been working on behind the scenes, there's been a lot of questions that have come up about the organic chemicals and pesticides and that will be used in this facility. We had submitted an initial list in our preliminary site plan application. We're currently working on refining that list, so we're going to submit a completely revised list of anticipated organic chemicals and pesticides, along with a more detailed description of how they'll be used in the building, just so both the planning board and ZBA sort of have a better understanding of how that will be used. Again, I just want to reiterate, all those materials are stored inside of the building. We've also been working on more detailed calculations about the amount of water that we're anticipating being used on the site. We'll be pulling together a water impact statement that discusses both our water usage and, sort of in conjunction with our stormwater report, the amount of groundwater recharge that will be experienced by the site. And we're working on that report, and we plan on submitting that shortly, obviously for Beta's review. We're working with the Beta's sub for peer review on specifically odor and noise, pulling together more detailed information based on what they've requested. Look forward to working together with both Beta and their sub to address any concerns that they have related to that. Yes, sir.
In your parking area, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind.
Sure.
Do you have a capture area for all the runoff from the parking surface? And is it then discharged in, you know, in a controlled way, or
Yep.
the groundwater?
Yeah, sure. So there's an infiltration basin, located here. There's a subsurface infiltration system located below the loading dock, and then there's another infiltration basin located in the back of the site. All the runoff from our site passes through one or more of those best management practices, the BMPs, to provide peak flow attenuation, treatment, and groundwater recharge. There's also catch basins with deep sumps and sediment forebays that provide pre-treatment as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Water, odor, noise. Energy use is just, again, want to touch on that. Has been another topic that's been coming up. Again, Bob mentioned this is a hybrid greenhouse, which means that it has the grow areas, which are located in this portion of the building to the east, have a translucent roof to allow sunlight to penetrate, and we use that natural sunlight for the growing of the plants. There are grow lights proposed inside the building. However, it's intended, obviously, as much as possible to be using the natural sunlight in lieu of those grow lights. Specifically for those grow lights, our system is below the industry standard in terms of the requirement for watts per square foot. The lights are also designed, they have two functions that allow them to be more energy efficient. They're arranged in like a checkerboard pattern, so that light and that light and that light can be on, but that light and that light and that light can be off. And they're also computer controlled and can be dimmed, so it's not like they're on or off. The computer, depending on how much sunlight is available, say it's in the winter months when the sunlight's not as powerful, we can have our lights on but not at full power, reducing the amount of energy that's required. I'm going to jump into the architectural, but before I do that, any sort of questions about represented so far? Bob, if you could click to the next. Boop, boop, boop. So this is the sheet A301. It's from our site plan originally. We've updated it for two things. Number one, we've added some color, and the second thing is we've added the roof vent fans. I realize that the vent fans look quite large on this picture. I have another rendering that sort of puts them in a little more context, so if you'll bear with me, I'll get to that. But these are the four elevations of the building. In general, the bottom 3 feet of the building there's 3 sides that do not face the street. Again, will be corrugated aluminum. The bottom 3 feet is a darker brown color. The upper portions of the wall are a lighter brown color. And the portions of the roof that are not over a grow space, which would be on the western side of the site further away from the road, are that same darker color as the bottom 3 feet. This is the elevation here that you'll see from Asbury Street. You can see that there's the translucent portions of the roof here that are over the grow areas. This area in the middle, again, is that darker brown color. Going down the center of the greenhouse perpendicular to the road is just a corridor which all the grow spaces are located off of, so that portion is just dark. And you can see, and these are all those fans I was mentioning. This is the view from Asbury Street. You can barely see the top portion of it. And then, Bob, if you could click me.
There's siding on it too, right?
Oh, yes, that's a good point. So I wasn't even thinking to mention that. On the elevation that faces Asbury Street, we're not doing the corrugated metal. We have a textured wood material, again, to sort of give it that more feel that's consistent with that overall neighborhood. Go ahead to the next slide, Bob, real quick. Again, this is sort of this is not a rendering with the screening. I know I sort of went over those last time. We'd be happy to update those renderings for the board as well, but we just wanted to give kind of a better perspective of what the building would look like. You can sort of see those roof vent fans sort of poking out right there, but again, as you sort of step back from that building, it sort of frames them up in a little better context.
But they're right in the center.
Yes, so Bob, if you go back 2 slides, please, Bob. So the greenhouses run with their ridge lines in this direction, so I believe it's 7 bays of greenhouse. So you have roof up and then roof down facing Asbury Street. They're located along that central corridor, but there's none that are located on that roof face. The front face, is that the technical term? That faces Asbury Street. We purposely relocated them off of that face for visual purposes. That was sort of all again, if you guys have any other questions, we're happy to answer any other questions you have.
Bob, the next slide, I don't understand the top one. Look with all the things bobbing out the top.
That's what he was just talking about. Those are the fans that he was just talking about.
Okay.
But they're only
to the other one.
they're only in the center.
That's why at the angle you don't quite see them as well.
Right.
You know, and again, on that very top one, Asbury Street is on the left side, so you see the front face. We moved that fan away from there, so.
Correct. So this is Asbury Street over here, and as you can see, there's on this roof, but we relocated them from that face of the roof that.
Right, and then show them on the bottom one.
Right. So this is
They're only in the center.
I'm sorry. This is the view. This is the view from Asbury Street. So this right here are like these two. It's this one and the other one on the back side that's at the very top that you can just see the very top of. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
And again, when you look at an elevation, architecturally they're drawn in 2D. When you're really looking at it in a perspective, your view lines are obscured a little, which is why, if you just click to that next slide again, Bob. Again, when you look at it from a real perspective, they're screened much better. And again, what's not shown in this that we showed at the last hearing is all the landscaping and screening that occurs.
Plus rail is there, right? Plus rail fence I see, is that on there?
Correct. Yep.
So this is looking south, right?
Yes.
When you're going down Asbury Street, you'd actually, from this view, you'd see the fans on both sides of the last 6 bays.
So no, because there's a bunch of landscaping that would be here.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You weren't at the last present. I do have those views. I could pull them up. But basically, there's a bunch of landscaping here that sort of obstructs the view from both sides when you're coming northbound or southbound on Asbury.
And there are no fans on the far back roofs, or are they?
No, none on the far back. They're only over the grow area, and again, they're not on that front face.
Yeah, and you'd have to be
standing like
standing,
in the property to really,
right,
because of the way. Yep.
Sorry, one question real quick. You have to come up though, just so everybody can hear your question, as long as it's related to this topic.
Christopher Abbott, we're, I think, the nearest abutter that objects to this. How many fans are there, Kevin?
Go back a slide, Bob. Oh, one more.
That view or more? No, that's the one.
18, I think.
So 18 fans?
I'd have to confirm that number, but
Between 15 and 20, something like that. Going 24/7.
they do not operate 24/7. And as I previously mentioned, we're preparing a noise study which will include all the noise that's generated from these individuals.
Which we're going to review at a
Yep.
subsequent meeting. But thank you. Any other questions?
We'll be here, obviously, to answer whatever questions you guys have.
One in the audience.
Yeah. Was that all for you?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Great. So yeah.
Just had a couple of questions on what Mr. McGarry brought up. Ben Timon, counsel for Chris Abbott. The reduction in the impervious surfaces of 7,500 square feet, where does that roughly leave you in terms of the total amount of impervious surfaces?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. Whatever our total was minus, again, when we're going to get peer review comments from Beta on our stormwater report, and we'll incorporate those changes.
Okay, I'm not sure the total was in the application materials, but if it was, then we can.
It's absolutely, it's in the stormwater report.
It's in the stormwater report, okay. If you don't mind, stand back up, because a couple of questions about, at the ZBA meeting last time, you were asked about, by one of the members, about the necessity for installing underground power lines to support the electricity, and I think you answered that that would be necessary. Is that right or not?
Can you go back a slide, Bob? Excuse me. We're proposing, from a utility standpoint, there'll be a new pole located by the utility company on our side of the property in this area over here, and then it'll be overhead across the street, and then underground utilities to where they feed the building in the back.
Okay, and then finally, you mentioned just now that the electricity use would be below industry standard. Can you quantify that at all? Do you have a sense of, how much less, or?
So just based on our experience on what we've seen on other grow facilities, the watts, the power per square foot of the light that's required, we're under that on what we've seen on other projects that we've worked on.
Okay, because in Mr. Patton's letter, he talks about this facility using a third or a fourth of typical repurposed industrial cultivation facilities.
If I can answer from here, it's just, that's on the lighting, of course. We're talking about the lighting, which is, of course, usually the great power drain on these enclosed structures, the industrial style structures. And I've read through the greenhouses, all the providers, they say as much as a 90% savings. More conservatively, they say it could be about a third of what you might expect in an industrial grow in an enclosed, refitted warehouse, or a quarter, but it's certainly a fraction, and I would leave it at that. But yeah, that was a pretty conservative number. I've heard as much as 90% savings with the translucent roof, but it's significant, and I'll leave it at that. I stand by what I've read, but that's roughly the range of savings that we would expect.
Okay. Obviously, it's up to you guys to provide that data if it's something that you choose to do. But
particularly our grower, whom you met a couple of weeks ago, is an expert in that, and is very, very, very green in all his outlook, and is proud of what we're going to be able to achieve in terms of energy savings. But you have to back it up. I get that.
I'm sorry. One final question about odor mitigation and the FOGCO system. You said at the last meeting that you thought, I don't want to say that you gave us a lead cinch guarantee on it, but that you thought that there was a facility in Rhode Island, I believe, that was using that. My client contacted FOGCO to get locations for where that was in use, and basically he's discovered, based on the FOGCO information, that there doesn't appear to be anything nearby where it's actually in use, but that it could be that you have information that's more up to date. So I know you said you were going to look into that.
Yeah, so again, we've been in contact with that particular peer reviewer about odor and noise, and we'll be providing all that supplemental information. I don't have a specific address where the system's being used at this time.
Thank you.
Kevin, one of the things that, in that we're very early in the process, and you were talking about a number of the more global kinds of issues. Some of the things that have come up have been related to how the building was sited, where it was. Can you work us through that again? I know you had talked about where the Conservation Commission wetlands lines are delineated and how that impacted locating the building. Thank you.
So I had a graphic that we put up last time that I do still have that presentation. We can put that up if needed. But what it really showed is this existing wetland line that's located right here in the back of the property. That's actually not only a wetland, but it's the edge of mean annual high water of the Ipswich River. So there is a 200-foot riverfront area associated with that. And when we showed the riverfront area and the floodplain and then all these existing areas that are currently wooded in the back, as well as this area here, which you can't tell looking at a 2D plan, but is actually a pretty large hill. We did originally look at siting this facility in the back, but what we very quickly realized is it would have really not fit in the back because of all these other resource areas that it would impact it. And again, one of the things that Green Meadows has been really important and big on this whole time is being environmentally sensitive. So taking the site and relocating it in the front in a previously disturbed area, you know, an area where we do have some existing impervious surfaces now that we're going to remove. Obviously, we're putting impervious surfaces back. That's sort of how that whole design evolution came about. Yes, sir.
What about the fields to the
Sure.
northeast?
Over here?
Yeah.
This is actually the Hamilton-Topsfield town line. So this is Hamilton. This is Topsfield over here. That's obviously in the other town, and this area is actually restricted in Topsfield and can't be developed.
Conservation.
Yep. Yes, you are welcome.
And who owns that other?
That's your own as well. Yeah, and that's being farmed. We're leasing those fields to Marini Farms. So that whole area, that's under cultivation and will be, as it was last year, it's just, we're not doing it ourselves, we're leasing it to them. We did it last year as well.
Speaking of that, is that, you're the owner developer of this facility. Are you actually going to run it? Or are you going to lease it out to one of the, I mean, there's a whole slew of nationwide big growers now.
This is just us. So the gentleman there, the handsome guy at the end on the second row, that's our COO. He's also my stepson.
Okay. So you're
I'm the CEO.
Oh, okay.
We have other members, but it is a family business for sure.
As in other states, it's very common for owner developers to build the facility, but then lease it out to
I will
growers.
say Massachusetts is trying to look at ways to sort of keep smaller operators safe from that. They're limiting licenses. They're limiting the conglomeration of licenses, and so to some extent you have in the CCC and frankly in the progressive nature of this state a desire to keep small business, family businesses able to survive and be a business that
More
can work.
competition.
What's that?
Competition keeps prices
Maybe,
down.
listen, and I'm a believer in I'm a capitalist all the way, but it certainly helps to have the state trying to keep smaller businesses viable.
Great. Thank you. Jeff?
Chairman, members of the board, Jeff Maxtutis from Beta. So we prepared a evaluation of the traffic report and plans and application. And our letter is dated April 19th, 2019, last week. So as Kevin mentioned, Fuss & O'Neill provided us additional information after our initial review of raw traffic counts, trip generation and parking calculations, hours of operation, potential employee schedules, delivery trips and vehicles, truck turning radius figures for those delivery vehicles, and crop share association membership estimates. So in general, the study was done following guidelines that are developed by Mass Department of Transportation for impact assessment. So the report generally followed those guidelines. I'm going to go through my comments and issues and concerns that we had with the report. Starting with the existing conditions. The counts, the tube counts that were done on Asbury Street were done in February. Mass DOT recommends to present an average condition. Those counts should be increased by 13% to show an average condition of traffic volume. So we suggest those volumes get factored up by 13% to show a typical average condition, not a February winter condition. We asked for the estimate of peak hour trips at the driveway when it was used as a farm use. The applicant wasn't able to provide actual vehicle trips, but did provide an estimate of CSA membership, anywhere between 260 and 400 members, depending on the year. We were just want to confirm that the site and site driveway, there was a prior use at the site that was generating traffic at the site, and that seems to be true. Figure 1 in the study shows vehicle trip distribution. It's how vehicles arrive and exit the site. That figure showed a general kind of average distribution for both peak hours. We're suggesting you show the actual distribution for the AM and PM peak hours, which is a little different than the average. They also did collect the traffic speeds on Asbury Street in both directions. The 85th percentile vehicle speed is what traditionally posted speed limits can be set at by Mass DOT. It was 39 miles an hour in both directions. I drove the road a couple times during the peak periods, and that number seems reasonable for that roadway and that location. There were 2 crashes that were reported between 2014 and 2016. Looks like they were both related to hitting fixed objects, such as trees, on the side of the roadway. So there wasn't a big crash history at the site. For future conditions, Fuss and O'Neill estimated trip generation based on Institute of Transportation Engineers ITE trip generation manual for land use code warehouse. There's nothing specifically for a grow type site like this in IT, so you have to make an assumption. I think that's as close as you can get for this site. And looking at the number of employees that Kevin had stated previously, 50 on kind of a staggered start pattern, that the trip generation they came up with about 37 vehicles in the morning and afternoon peak hours. So that's a total of in and out during each of those peak hours. That seems reasonable for the site, given what it's just employees and a couple deliveries, maybe a visitor here or there, but it's not a retail type of establishment. And I wanted to note that the daily trip generation, based on that use, would be about 150 to 200 vehicle trips a day. So that'd be the total generation. One comment we had that we'd like to see the board consider an applicant should provide a schedule for when deliveries are made, truck trips, so those don't have impacts late nights, early mornings, as stated in the host community agreement. So that's something we're asking for. Figure 2 in the report should be revised to show the suggested trip generation figures that I suggested earlier. The traffic engineer should confirm that future traffic volume growth on Asbury Street is minimal. They did not provide a future condition, just an existing condition with the project trips. So it doesn't appear that there'll be a significant growth, but I want to confirm that with the engineer that it will not be significant in the future. They should also provide a figure that shows future traffic volumes, turning volumes at the driveway. So existing and project volumes, they did not provide that in the study, so that's a typical item that's provided. And it appears that really have probably little delay at the driveway, but I want them to confirm that the intersection will operate at acceptable conditions or level of service in the future. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I just want to make sure that's the case. So intersection site distance, Fuss and O'Neill followed methodology that's provided in both the Mass Highway Department and AASHTO standard guidelines. Stopping site distance is for vehicles looking to the site driveway, and intersection site distance is from the intersection or driveway, in this case, looking at the roadway. So they followed methodology. I actually measured the site distance myself and agreed with their calculations. However, there's one instance that I want to mention, and I could just point to it here. When vehicles are approaching southbound, yeah, thank you. It's right about here, the roadway. If you're coming southbound, it kind of dips, it turns to the left, and there's a little dip there. You can actually see the site driveway fine, but you can't see the northbound approach that well. And, you know, if a vehicle is turning left into the driveway from that northbound direction, we're suggesting you might want a little bit of awareness for vehicles approaching, that they know vehicles may be turning there. There's a driveway there. There may be vehicles turning at that point. There's not a history of crashes. You know, if you know it's there, you know it. If you don't, so we're suggesting maybe an advance warning sign. Of course, an advance warning sign would have to be in Topsfield before the driveway. So I don't know if that's an issue or not in this case, but you know, we're suggesting that the applicant consider that, and the board consider that type of measure for sight distance. And also, I know there will be a proposed sign for the new facility. I just want to make sure that that sign doesn't block or restrict sight distance in any way. You know, I'm not sure where that's going to be now. Maybe it was on the site plan. But
yeah, it's on the site plan. It's near the driveway.
Yeah.
It will not be located in sight distance. Yep.
Right. Just want to make sure it doesn't restrict sight distance there. We also looked at site issues: parking, access, and circulation. As Kevin mentioned, Fuss & O'Neill estimated parking generation using IT's parking generation manual, again for warehouse. The report showed 55 spaces. The site plan showed 57, but I know it's just presented here this evening, 47 spaces. The only thing with 47 spaces, I would suggest maybe the fire department, if vehicles are going to be parking, against the building, get concurrence from the fire department that they're okay with that situation, that they can get vehicles to the building, on all sides when necessary. The parking space dimensions were fine. The driveway itself is 24 feet, which meets bylaw standards. Asphalt paving meets standards. One thing we saw, I don't know if you can see it here, but the bylaws do suggest parking bumpers where it's against the sidewalk here, so the front of the vehicle doesn't go and edge over the sidewalk when people are walking. It's something to consider in that situation if if the applicant wants to provide those there. With bylaw 6.2.5, the proposed driveway connection to Asbury Street must be approved by the Department of Public Works in consultation with Police Department, so that needs to be done. And just I would, again, with the parking situation, the fire department would, I suggest they review the site plan with that occurrence. As Kevin said, Fuss & O'Neill provided us turning movements of vehicles entering and exiting, both for a 30-foot box truck, which is a typical type of single-unit truck, and also a wheelbase 67-foot tractor trailer, which is one of the largest tractor trailers. And that was adequate what they provided. It looks like the vehicles can move around, within the site adequately. And my last comment was a traffic management plan has not been provided. Typically it's provided later, but we suggest they do provide that, so it minimizes any impacts of construction on abutters, residents of the town, and so forth. And that's a summary of what's in our letter and the comments that we had. We can take questions if you have questions.
Any questions from the board?
Said I read the report.
Mm-hmm. I had one question in the audience.
Yeah, Chris,
Can you just pop up to the microphone, please?
oh,
All right, it's on TV and on videotape, so we just need to
Okay.
have that sound.
I should have dusted my head. Chris Abbott. Bob, what were the hours of the farm stand? It was something like 10 till 5?
No, it was 8 till 6, Tuesdays through Sundays.
Okay, so now
8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
we're expanding that to 7 to 8. So we've talked about the amount of traffic, but it's going to be a number of hours after and 1 hour before.
Right,
It seemed to me it was open at 9 or 10, because I used to walk down, but.
I only have, when my mother ran it, but I looked at the flyers that they were
Yeah,
sending
gotcha,
out, and
okay.
it was 8 to 6 p.m. And they had the evening events as well. They had the farm to tables, which started at 5:30.
Right.
So those were not every night, but in the summer
No.
they were pretty frequent.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Yep, sure.
Jeff and I have spoken, kind of talked through all these comments. My traffic engineer did feel like he could go on vacation over this past weekend, so he just got back today. He and I went through the comments. Fuzz-O-Noodle doesn't see any issues with addressing all of Beta's comments. The only thing I wanted to mention for the last comment, the traffic management plan, there's going to be no parking on Asbury Street during construction. There's going to be no staging of delivery vehicles on Asbury Street during construction. So I just, in case anybody was thinking that, you know, everything will be on our site. We definitely have enough room to move around on this site during construction and obviously once it's operating. So again, if you guys have any questions, traffic or otherwise related, happy to answer. That's it.
Thank you. Yep, Patrick.
Just a quick question. Kevin, what are your thoughts about snow removal, snow loading, snow placement?
Sure. So snow, typically when they plow parking lots and driveways and things of that nature, snow is typically stored at the ends. I would anticipate you're going to have snow storage at the end of the loading dock here, snow storage all along the sides of the driveway, you know, in the parking islands, off in between the landscaping. If snow does become so big of an issue that the piles become too big and it's affecting parking, there is obviously space here in the front of the site where they could relocate some of the snow. There'll be no snow obviously brought in from an off-site source. I believe that was in the HCA maybe, or if I feel like I read that somewhere. And again, Green Meadows fully intends to use sand to control all the snow on the site, not de-icing chemicals, if it could be avoided.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else from
Yes,
the board?
sir.
Oh. No? Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you. So Patrick, next meeting, we will be discussing what topics?
Yeah, next meeting, we're dealing with site plan. That includes utilities, stormwater also, correct?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, you said I'd have that like by the end of the day today, right? Comments? No, just kidding. Our plan moving forward, so we're expecting comments from Beta on, site plan, utilities, stormwater. I think we were talking maybe this week or early next week. So Fuzz-O-Noodle will get those comments. We will also prepare a formal response letter to Jeff's traffic letter, get that over to Jeff. Our hope would be by the time we're back in front of you in May, hopefully we'll have something from Jeff that says that we've addressed all his concerns from a traffic standpoint. I don't know if we'll have a revised site plan and stormwater report at that point. You know, if we can, we will. But that would be our plan. And then again, those other items I mentioned, odor, noise, some of the organic chemicals, that supplemental information, we'll be providing that both to the board, to Patrick, and to Beta, sort of as we pull that information together in preparation for the rest of that process. Yes, sir.
Ipswich River Watershed wrote a letter to you.
Yes.
Are you addressing it specifically and adopting different practices, or were you already intending to do those things?
So yeah, we've received that letter. I've spoken with Wayne over at the Ipswich River Watershed, I think 2 or 3 times now. I don't really see any major hiccups in addressing the majority of his comments. I think we have actually, like a lot of the things he was asking for about recharge, we're already really providing that as part of our sort of basis of design here, as what we have to do for the stormwater handbook. So if we need to, we'll go in and talk with the Ipswich Watershed and kind of walk them through what we've done so far. And again, once Beta reviews, obviously, our stormwater report, they can opine on any of those issues as well.
Yeah, it'd be great if they just sent us a supplemental letter saying that you've complied with all of their wishes or something like that. It'd be cool, because they had a lot of conservation requests.
You want me to go? Please.
I don't want to take up extra time, but I've met with Wayne once. I know Kevin has spoken with him. I'm very excited about some of the technologies that we're putting in here, including a water. Well, we'll learn more about water as we go forward, so now's not the time. But the kinds of things that Wayne didn't sort of put us onto it, but I was happy to sort of just think about these kinds of things. But for example, our water treatment of the town water that will come in, it has to be treated to be properly optimal for the plants. And we were going to use an RO system, which has wastewater and uses electricity. And we've now contracted with a very innovative, forward-thinking green company from Florida, which uses a passive filtration system, which has a much more safe, what's the return on the water we get? Is it 90% now that we're going to get out of there? The kind of thing that I can't wait to tell Wayne about, you know, and I want to have that kind of relationship with Ipswich River. They have a net zero desire. I told them we're going to try our damnedest to get there, and I said, and I asked him, I said, if every company that you know tries as hard as we are, you're going to be a pretty successful, voice for the environment. So we're working on that, and that's an important relationship. So I just wanted to say that.
So you thought about using permeable pavement in the parking lots?
We're not currently proposing permeable pavement in our parking lot. No, we're achieving all our infiltration through, like I said, those infiltration basins and the subsurface infiltration system.
It's not the greatest thing in our environment
I
here
wondered about that, yeah.
in terms of durability. At least it wasn't years ago. Maybe it's better now, but that's been
Well,
what I've heard in the past.
Not treatable that way. You know, the oil and grease that comes off the car just goes into the ground.
Right.
Right.
There are varying schools of thought on porous pavement. I'll leave it at that. All right.
I think we're good. Great. Great. Thank you, guys. Any comments from the audience before we let them go?
Let me suggest that the board vote to continue it to the next meeting.
I make a motion the board continue the public hearing for the medical marijuana facility site plan review to our next meeting on May.
Or is it May
7th.
second?
May
7th, yeah.
May 7th.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Is Larry here for stormwater management?
We don't. No. We just started, my friend. I just wondered.
Wants to go home.
Yeah. Right.
Rules are up.
2-0, yeah.
Oh, good.
Game 7. Okay, next up is an abbreviated stormwater management permit for 47 Winthrop Street for Franz and Colorado Mansfield. Larry Graham is here.
Yes.
How are you?
Hi, good.
Good.
It's the Mansfield, huh?
Put this up in a minute.
Good for work, you know?
Hmm?
What's it for?
What do you mean, what's it for?
Another marijuana facility?
Didn't you look at it?
No, I didn't. I just saw it tonight. And what it is.
Good evening, Larry Graham with H.L. Graham Associates of Ipswich, and representing this evening the abbreviated stormwater management permit application for Colorado Mansfield at 47 Winthrop Street. With me this evening in the back, trying to hide in the middle, is Hugh Collins. Hugh is is with Landscape Design Group, and he's the landscape architect for the project. The project is a single-family residential accessory structure and landscape improvement project, if you want to put some name to it. It's an 8.7 acre lot. It's up at the end of a private way off of Winthrop Street. And does everybody kind of know where it is in general? Okay. I was brought into the project actually by Hugh to provide some grading backup and review with him, and then to provide stormwater drainage for the site. I'm going to go ahead and make this presentation, but at the end of it, I'm going to suggest that maybe we didn't need to be here after all, and that the board can perhaps find at the end of this presentation that the project really did not require a stormwater management permit. With that said, though, I'm going to go ahead and give you a rundown on the project. H.L. Graham Associates has designed this system. The system is a very responsible drainage system, consists of catch basins with hoods and sumps, manholes, piping, a water quality inlet, and an infiltration system to collect and to treat, to infiltrate and store runoff from all the hard surfaces, including roofs and also the lawn and landscaped areas. Because it's a fairly complex hardscape and landscape project and improvements, there are a significant number of BMPs, these catch basins, and et cetera, that I just described that I'll go through in a minute for the project. But I'll bring that up because I don't want the number of BMPs, the number of structures, to imply to the board that this is a major project. It's not. It's really a fairly small project. And when we look at my drawings, they're at a 10 scale. And let's do that now quickly. The project. Everybody see it if I leave it on the floor? Yeah. This will be sliding around. This is the Colorado Mansfield dwelling here in light shaded blue, and the existing driveway comes down, winds its way up from Winthrop Street around. It's the last house in the compound there, and the yellow is the outline of the existing circular driveway that approaches the house. The other aspects of the project, the aspects of the improvement project, include then the redesign of this entry court. Instead of the round, a square court, which will have a pass-through to a service court here to serve a garage. And then behind the garage, or to the west of the garage, is a proposed pool and a small pool house. That is the extent of the accessory structures that are proposed. And of course there are walks and walls. Everything highlighted in pink here is basically the hardscape walls, walks, pavement, and buildings. Hugh has been involved with developing an extensive landscape plan, and if we were to put his plan on here, probably all the pink lines would disappear because he's got green shrubs and trees and lawn and so forth that sort of smother this whole pink area that I've outlined.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Why don't you
Yes,
put
sir.
those on the chair? A little easier for you and a little easier for us to see it too. Thank you.
So that's the improvement project, and the stormwater drainage system which we've designed is highlighted in blue. The grading generally in the entry court is from south to north, or from the existing dwelling toward the north in the entry drive. So we needed to have catch basins located at the corners of that entry court. We also needed to have collection or catch basins located at the bottom of the drive because you're coming down to the entry court and then going back up toward the house. So we had catch basins at the corners again and here at the driveway. We also have one out here to pick up some overland flow that's coming down that we did not want to be running into the court and picking up in this corner. So that's the extent of the drainage there. As we enter into the service court and the garage will drain back toward the entry court. We'll pick that up in a trench drain, pipe it to this corner catch basin to a manhole here. And then from that manhole, we go into a water quality inlet. The water quality inlet is set there to provide additional treatment for the runoff from the paved surfaces. So all the paved surfaces here run through the water quality inlet as well as the any runoff that we might trap in this catch basin, which will be out in the field, but is subject to some runoff from the driveway after some overland flow gets to that catch basin. Out of the water quality inlet, we go westerly, pick up another field drain, a couple of root drains off the garage, and then turn and go subtly down toward an infiltration chamber. But on its way, we've got a manhole here where we're picking up drainage from the house, the roof drains, some area drains, a couple of window well drains. We turn that through a couple of manholes that's necessary to get to this point. And then we take that down to an infiltration chamber, which this is that point here where we proceed on subtly to this infiltration chamber with an overflow down to and short of the 100-foot buffer zone to an extensive wetland that eventually empties into Black Brook. So that's the project. The project area, if you drew a box around it, it's about 120 feet in width, north to south. You want to come up and hold this thing for me?
Might be good for something.
Yeah. I'm going to get you up here for some. So the project area or dimensions in a rectangular fashion, about 120 feet south and north, north to south here, and about 350 feet across from this point to the westerly side of the pool area. And if you did that math real quick, you come up with about 42,000 square feet. It's less than an acre. And the permanent land disturbance is considerably less than an acre. And your land disturbance, just to refresh your memory on your definition, your bylaw, is any action that causes a change in the position, location, or arrangement of soil, sand, rock, gravel, or similar material. So as we went through this, I was a bit unsure as to whether or not to file for a stormwater management permit, whether or not to file for an abbreviated one or not. And to be on the conservative side, we filed for the abbreviated stormwater management permit just so I could get it before the board and air it out with the board and see whether or not you felt that you wanted to entertain permitting that or processing that for a permit, or whether or not you might consider that it really doesn't need or qualify. Again, that box is roughly 42,000 square feet, less than an acre. The pool area, just to give you some round numbers, about 4,500 square feet in that pool area box. The garage is about 1,800 square feet. And all the auto courts, all the area of the two courts, auto courts, and the driveway adds up to about 11,500 square feet. So you've got about roughly 17,700, let's say 18,000 square feet of permanent disturbance, and the remainder are about 24,000 square feet of temporary, what I call temporary alteration or temporary disturbance that will be replaced by lawn and an extensive landscape plan that Hughes developed. I think it's very possible to make the case to you tonight that a stormwater SMP, stormwater management permit's not required. And I'm sure you have some questions for me, but perhaps tonight you will decide that it's not required and we go watch the Bruins.
Patrick, thoughts?
The one item, let me have you react to this. This is in the regulations. It's 3A applicability for smaller projects. Number 5, it says a lot that has less than 30,000 square feet with a slope of 5% or greater. Well, you've just told us that, you know, you're disturbing certainly more than that geometrically, right?
Yes. Yes.
So to me, that definitely kicks you into the requirement for an abbreviated stormwater management permit.
Yeah, I think that any of these do. Yeah.
Right, but you know, that to me categorizes that you are an applicable project for this type of permit.
Okay.
Can you draw your boundaries
well,
so you come up with 30,000 square feet?
I don't think so. I don't think we can do that. But maybe I mean, this is the first time that I've had the occasion to apply or to apply this bylaw and make an application. But when it says a land disturbance equal to or greater than 1 acre but less than 2, provided construction will occur on. So we're less than an acre. I mean, less than 1 acre actually. Certainly less than 2. But there are portions of the lot that exceed 5%, and it's a lot less, certainly less than a lot that has less than 30,000 square feet. And you're reading that as if the 30,000 square feet is the area of the lot that has slopes over 5%.
Yes, sir.
I did not attempt to quantify that, but I would say in an 8.5 acre lot, we certainly exceed that.
Yeah.
Well, but or does that mean you're disturbing or working in that area of 30,000 square feet and 5%?
Right,
and this is entirely disturbed land anyway, right?
Where we're working.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Not all of it. This area is, and some part of this, but the pool area is pretty much undisturbed. Is that correct, Hugh?
Okay.
Nonetheless, you prepared a stormwater site, abbreviated site plan.
So
we're good.
Yeah.
I did, and beside that, I think we went over and beyond what you would normally expect for a single-family residential project, which in and of itself is not subject to the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Standards as a single-family project, single-family house or dwelling project. This is probably more drainage than I've ever put on a plan for any single-family house in my career of several decades. So.
Yeah, no, it's probably
So, Patrick, do you have any comment about the submission in terms of its completeness?
I consider this a complete application. I do, you know, possibly when I was out of the room, you talked through the waiver areas. Did you?
I did not, but I did ask for a couple of waivers, bringing that to the attention of the board. They are, I can go, I think, go by memory. And I think one which we no longer need, and that is, we had a drainage area here that came down and host peak discharge up a little bit. Now we're bringing it in with this new catch basin here and this yard drain, and bringing it through our system. So we no longer need that one. There was another waiver that I asked for that was about running catch basins and the water quality inlet offline. Generally, you run those offline if you can, so that the flow coming in, we'll take this basin for instance, the flow coming in from these other basins don't disturb or create a turbulence in this basin. And the same thing with the water quality inlet. This is just, it would create so many additional structures if I had to comply with that particular standard. So I asked for relief on that.
Okay. I did check with the DPW director. He has no comments. He found it all acceptable. His only comment is that he wanted to make sure that it was privately maintained.
It's totally expected to be privately maintained, and we've outlined in our report, our drainage report, frequency twice a year for the owner applicant to take a peek in these catch basins. They all have 4-foot sumps and hoods. Clean them out, clean out the sediment. Same thing in the water quality inlet. So that is anticipated and expected by the owner applicant.
The one question I had beyond the waivers is, and I'm sure as part of Hugh's participation, there were probably some low impact development kinds of applications used in the site plan. Could you talk to us about that?
Well, there is, as far as low impact, we're not proposing to, on the driveway here, we're bringing that down to these two catch basins. We're trying the best we can to eliminate structures, but because of the grading of the entry court and the service court, it's actually requiring us to put in many more structures than necessary. We don't want to have any ponding or open surface water in this general area, so we are not able to do that, but rather bringing everything through the system and down to this infiltration basin. So from that perspective, we don't achieve real low impact development in that case, but we're doing the best we can. I think the landscape effort that Hugh and the applicant are going to do here is going to kind of offset what we couldn't do with the stormwater.
When you're referring to structures, what do you mean? What kind of structures are you talking about?
Catch basins, manholes, all subsurface structures except for the grades.
And to Rick's question, I do think that the application has addressed all of the elements within the stormwater management regulations of the town.
So we just have to vote to approve, or?
Yeah, two votes. No, the first vote that you need to undertake is that it qualifies for an abbreviated permit. And then the second would be that it complies with the regulations and that you approve the waiver request that the applicant has just mentioned. You'll see those in your package under number 5 of the item under number 2.
So do you want first a motion that we accept this as an abbreviated stormwater management permit?
Yes, ma'am.
The requirements for, for 47 Winthrop Street as presented in the document March 15th, 2019?
Second.
Any discussion?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Unanimous on that. Want to do the second one?
A motion to accept the abbreviated stormwater management plan, or to approve the permit with the following waivers. And is it all of these waivers, or did you say that there was one that was not needed?
Here you go. Yeah, thanks. Well, we have improved. Number one is not needed. First bullet's not needed. Number two, we've revised our plans now. What we are showing are 4-foot deep sumps, as I mentioned. We do have a note on the plan because there are some areas, particularly up around the house and maybe on the bottom left corner, where we do expect some ledge. So we've got a note on the plan if we can't get 4-foot sumps to get 2-foot sumps minimum. So that's a slight change to that. The third bullet is still applicable, as is the fourth, both for standard 4.
So, Patrick, should I just go ahead and do the second one, just in case? Okay, so with the following waivers, to permit the use of catch basins with 2-foot versus 4-foot sumps for the TSS removal credit due to the small size of the drainage areas, and to permit inline catch basins for TSS removal credit due to the small size of the drainage areas, and to permit inline water quality unit due to the small scale of the drainage area.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? All right, I think we're good, right?
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Unless you have any other questions.
We're good?
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Do you want to take,
Yeah. Okay, we'll take something out of order. We'll take Sam and the MAPC Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan presentation.
Just grabbed it. It's got it. Oh, had it.
So good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for taking the time, for letting me in this evening. I know you're very busy. Thank you. Great.
Pull this sideways a hair. Safer.
There we go. Great. Sam Cleaves, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'm here to talk to you briefly this evening about the town's Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan update, MAPC, which is your regional planning agency for the Boston area. I've worked with Brian a couple of projects here over the years. We have been hired to help the town update its Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. Why are we doing this? It's a federal requirement. Hazard mitigation plans deal with natural hazards only. The fulfillment of the plan allows the town to go after uncapped federal grants, natural hazard mitigation grants. They're very handy for things like major culvert replacements, safety updates, that type of thing. So this is sort of the key in the lock for that. And it's a 5-year process. You do this every 5 years. Been working with the local natural hazard mitigation team.
And this is how it works. Hazard mitigation, again, this is not biohazards, not chemical hazards, they're natural hazards, the ones that we all worry about now on almost continuous basis. So prevention of losses of life, injuries of property, reduction and development of strategies. Let's get rid of that. What actions are being taken now by the town and what can be done in the future to reduce these risks. So on the left, it's a comparison between 2011 on the left and 2019 on the right, between the hazards that were considered in the last plan and what the state has added. The state of Massachusetts recently completed its 2018 Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, and we're required to follow what they lay out for hazards. So these are what you're going to be dealing with. Obviously, the number one culprit in our part of the world is flooding and nor'easters. Fortunately, we're not in line for too many earthquakes. We have had a recent drought, 2016, and we've all seen the effects of climate change through extreme temperatures. We've got a bump in invasive species. Other severe weather indicates high winds. If you've experienced things like microbursts in the middle of the summer, they're fairly common now, where you get a sudden gust of wind, knocks trees and power lines down, that type of thing. Very, very heavy can be also accompanied by a very heavy precipitation event of they're getting heavier and more intense as we go along. So
invasive species, both plant and animal.
Indeed, yes. My neck of the woods, gypsy moths have been around for a long time, but certainly as many animals and plants are migrating northward as temperatures increase, we're seeing creatures cross into territories that they've never occupied before, both marine and terrestrial. So this is how we do the plan. We've got a hazard mitigation team, the various departments for the town, headed up by Patrick and the DPW department head. We try to engage as many people as we can. This is one of the reasons we're here tonight and on a televised meeting. A couple of public meetings, of which this is one, during plan development and review of the draft plan. We'll be back either before the planning board or the Board of Selectmen to review the update once we are ready to submit the plan for public review online. And that'll be later on this spring. I think we'll be done within a month or two, and we'll put it up online on the town website. And we'd very much welcome the comments from the planning board on the plan, and we'll make sure to make you aware of when it does go up. This is the process where we look at identifying critical facilities, everything from pump stations to nursing homes to churches, preschools. It really is up to the town, well fields. We look at assessing risks and vulnerabilities. We look at your existing rules and regulations, and as well as best management practices, what the town is doing to prevent hazards now. We look at prioritizing current and future mitigation strategies really suggested by the team. A lot of this stuff, as you might expect, centers around infrastructure and communications changes. There's a lot more movement in these areas recently, particularly over on the coast, but picking up inland as well. And then we get into the plan approval and adoption process. This is a two-stage process. Once the town has reviewed it and made its comments, we send the plan off to MEMA, a mass emergency, and then once they comment back to us, we make changes, we send it up to FEMA for their review. And then once that comes back from FEMA and the plan goes in front of the Board of Selectmen for adoption, it's good for 5 years. It's important to note that the plan is not binding on the town. Actions within the plan are not binding, but they are necessary. The actions are necessary to pick out of the plan if the town wants to apply for grants using projects within the plan. So, hard to see here, but to give you an idea of some of the critical facilities, disaster response sites, fire and police, public safety, elderly housing, obviously places of assembly, and critical infrastructure are high on the list. And then we at MAPC combed through weather records and put together state and federal data on where your floodplains are. As you know, everybody updated their floodplain maps just a couple of years back within the last 5 or 6 years. Snowfall, wind speeds, all historical stuff. We look at the state hazard mitigation plan again to see, what hazards we're comparing to and what standards have changed and what to compare with. And probably most important, and really the value of the plan beyond getting you in line with federal grants, is coordinating locally with the team. And we found oftentimes one department is glad to know what another is doing and helps them coordinate public safety, DPW, and the like, and what's flooding where you've had trees down, how long did you lose power for, what kind of equipment do you need. Most of the towns know this stuff, but sometimes it's not always shared across departments as easily as it could be. So these are some of the existing measures that are already in place for, you've got first on the list is Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, which again is a federal requirement. This deals with evacuation, chemical spills, emergency actions. The fire department takes care of that and updates it yearly. Fortunately, we have a fairly comprehensive state building code, which, as you probably know, is being updated right now. It's through the ICC. And that is being updated. That's on a rolling 3-year process. It happens to be up this year. Some of the other stuff you'll see, National Flood Insurance Program for flood insurance, infrastructure is very high on the list here for most of these plans. Floodplain protection, whatever your own rules are around wetlands and building. And then best management practices around winter-related hazards, as well as brush fire-related hazards as well. So when we look at mitigation strategies, we try to find where the gaps are and what will further reduce vulnerability, and again, what the priorities will be for the town to make it the most useful plan over the next 5-year period. These are some of the examples from the 2011 plan that will be carried forward. The Winthrop Street Bridge, design and rebuild, Miles River, vegetation and flood management plan. This has been on, I did the town's actually their very first natural hazard mitigation plan, and this has been on the back burner for some time. And there's, again, still interest in doing vegetation and flood management around Miles River with the Army Corps, I believe. And then completion is, as you may or may not know, the MS4 stormwater permit, which is another federal requirement, is chugging along. Took quite a while to get finally adopted, but is in place now. And that's a 5-year process that will require each community that does have that's covered under the permit to look at their best management practices and eventually their development regulations for just the same stuff that you were talking about tonight, only it will go beyond stormwater regulations. It will cover urbanized areas. You'll get into low impact development and infiltrating a lot more water, and looking at green infrastructure in sort of a much more common fashion. You'll see quite a bit more of it probably within about 3 to 5 years. And again, new water standpipe over at Sagamore Hill. So this is just a little cross mix of some of the top priorities that are coming through on this update. So again, we'll be updating critical facilities, looking at what we do is really just map out and then digitize the mapped out areas identified by the teams. Again, this is, flooding, beaver problems, not so much dams here, but wind problems, infrastructure, communications. We look at potential development areas. Patrick will go over and look at recent and potentially future development areas. This gives us a handle on things like runoff, additional pervious area, then puts pressure on stormwater, existing stormwater
facilities. And then we'll take a look at updating existing measures and the status of mitigation from the previous plan. And then finally, really sitting down with the team and seeing what their key projects are moving forward for the plan update. This is a really terrible map of Hamilton, but this is our draft ortho. It's difficult to deal with maps, but I'd be happy to come back and review it with you another time. So this is really what we're missing. What we get most of our meaningful impact in when we ask people to review the draft that'll be online. We take a look at what are we missing. The team is very helpful, but we always look for more local experts. Where does it flood? What are we missing on brush fires? What do you know about your neighborhood in terms of winter storm or power outages? Obviously, hurricanes are almost always town-wide. Geologic hazards we're mostly spared from, although we are, believe it or not, in an area that has had earthquakes in the past, actually fairly substantial ones in the 1700s. So drought town-wide, we all deal with the ups and downs of the particular watersheds that we deal with in eastern Massachusetts, which tend to have plenty of water but not enough storage capacity. We get plenty of rain, but we all know the kinds of restrictions that we operate under, so those are always in question. Ice storms, high winds, invasive species, mitigation measures. Again, we would love to hear from you guys because you are out and about, and in many ways you're the eyes of the town. So,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to get information from us, from townspeople?
Well, we are going to post the draft plan and make that clear that it is posted. All the maps will be there and all the mitigation actions. And we leave it up there for a couple of weeks and ask people to review the plan and send comments to me.
So we're in the National Grid Utility Zone, and they've made a pretty massive effort in the last 6 months. I don't know if you're probably aware of that.
Absolutely. National Grid's been everywhere clearing rights of way. They've been in my neighborhood too. I live up in Gloucester, and they've done a great job. So again, what's next? We'll have another meeting on the draft plan. Once we get our comments in, we'll send it up to FEMA, up to MEMA, and then MEMA sends it to FEMA. The selectmen will vote to adopt the plan, and once that happens, you're good to go for another 5 years. This is my contact information. Yes, sir. All set. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to relay it to Patrick, I'd love to talk to you some more if you do have questions. So I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Glad you're doing it.
So you're doing it with the staff of the town?
Yes.
And then that'll result in 2 weeks or a month or something, and then you have a draft plan and you'll post it?
We post the draft for a couple of weeks online.
Okay.
Yep. So you'll get a chance to look at it. And
Yeah.
the meat of it is really, if you don't have time, I would ask you only to skim the actions. A lot of it is boilerplate that we have to do for FEMA. It's not particularly entertaining reading. But if you take a look at the mitigation actions and look at some of the areas, some of the mapping around where it floods and where it burns and where power has been lost, those are particularly key areas for us.
Who's the chair of the local effort, committee or whatever you want to call it? Who's the head person in town dealing with this?
Patrick is really the point person on that, as well as.
Poor Big B.
I got another hat.
Yes, yes. He's been our point person, but we have DPW, fire, conservation, police. Everybody's in on it. Board of Health. We've got some great people, and they do good work. So, thanks again.
All right, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, Patrick, can we review the decision for subdivision since the attorney's here?
Yes, you'll remember I did send out a decision text that came from Attorney Chris Heap. Later today, I actually did get some additional smallish edits from him on it. I did send that out. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I have copies for everybody.
It's changed, this one has changed, right?
Just a little.
Yeah, that was
Can I go run to the bathroom? That's an excellent idea. Everybody take a water break.
So we have to vote to accept this or just basically sign it, right?
Actually, this is what we voted
Yeah,
at the
right.
last meeting.
Right.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
have members proofread through it, and if you see things that my recall is in error on, let me know and we'll edit those out. But yeah, this is the product of the vote that was taken at the April the 2nd meeting. So no votes need to take place. Once we've finished this, I do have the Mylar plans that board members will sign.
Do you expect us to review it now?
Well,
The plans or the text?
Text.
That's the same text that you've had for,
yeah,
what, 2 weeks?
yeah. Yeah, there were some minor edits today, but
Yeah. I had some question regarding members who could sign based on who was present and absent. That was in,
Since solved that question?
yep.
What's the appeal period on this?
That is 20 days.
From the date we voted on it?
Right. No, actually, from the day that it's filed, which will be tomorrow morning. And based on who was present, et cetera, you'll see at the bottom of the page, Brian, Rick, Richard Boroff, Janelle, and Peter can vote on it. Ed, obviously, is no longer a member, so we can cross him out of the vote.
no, I reviewed it earlier and I'm fine with it.
So we don't need to do anything other than sign the plan?
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
And these were prepared, so the only signature is on the front page.
Yep.
Would it be easier to just leave it there and we'll all come around and sign it?
Good idea.
That's called a buffet signature.
Okay.
Is it just this one?
Just the front page.
Whatever you say.
Like Jimmy Buffet?
Yeah.
I think it's Jimmy, oh, wait.
Patrick, I should abstain,
It's
right?
Jimmy Buffett.
We can't do anything.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
We weren't at that meeting.
No, whatever.
Excellent, thank you.
Is this still going to be contested by the neighbors?
Don't know.
No, this is for Green Meadows. It's just a status print of the elevations.
Good?
We're good.
All right, I'm gonna bring us up to date on our residential master plan forum, which is,
The biggest thing is that we have our forum next Monday night, April the 29th, at the Hamilton Wenham Library. It's at 7 p.m. in the main meeting room on the main floor. We've been working toward this for quite some time. This will be the second forum meeting. We've been trying to get as much outreach as is possible. It's been on Facebook. It's been in the town website on various locations there for a number of days now. I know a number of you have been making some real efforts to try to get it out publicly as well. So I appreciate that.
Electronic sign.
Yeah, we even got it on the electronic sign, which is progress.
yeah, it's very prominent in red on the top of the website too.
Yes, it's on 3 of the various town community pages.
Yep.
And I've been bouncing it up every few days for a couple of 2 or 3 days now.
Yep, good, thanks.
So I know that, Brian, both you and Rick had some pretty detailed communications with Jennifer. Do you want to bring the board up to speed on those?
I would like to hear how that went.
Yeah, we we didn't really pull any punches with them. That we, last time we all met, we talked about the, the work product that we received from them, the summary report, and the, the 3, what do you call them, example projects, if you will, in 3 different locations. And we, basically said we were a little surprised at what they had chosen based on what the survey said, and also what in general was said at the last forum. The survey pretty clearly indicated a certain, certain directions, and their examples went in kind of the complete opposite. So we had that phone call with them, and the survey didn't end until after it came after the first forum, and they had based a lot of their decisions on that first forum. But it seemed like they kind of cherry-picked some of that forum and took things maybe a little bit out of context, if you will, and just kind of went with these larger development scenarios that, yes, was talked about, but it wasn't certainly the consensus or the it wasn't the consensus of most people. And obviously, in the survey, said the complete opposite. So we went back and forth with them on that a little bit, but
With Judy as well?
yes. Oh, yeah, she was on the call. Yep. It was, I said, it was helpful to have a look at what a large development would mean, right? In terms of what she looked at, in terms of town services and so forth. But we didn't need, 2 of them and then a 40 unit or 40 unit project. So I'm trying to remember exactly what we came up with in the end, that they were gonna do was look at a 20 unit cottage, right? Was one of the options.
Well, I think for the upcoming meeting,
Well,
they're going to focus
different, yeah.
exclusively on presenting the results of the
Right.
survey, the meeting,
Yeah, we-
what was the first meeting? The interviews.
Right. Yeah, we basically told them, we can't go into this meeting on the 29th with what they gave us. That it just,
We basically told them that they'd put the cart before the horse, that we were looking for the financial analysis to be done based on,
survey.
based on the survey and teasing out from both public forums, all the public forums and input, what was most favored and most likely be politically feasible in town, present some examples of that so people understand, if they're talking about a certain kind of housing, what is it going to look like and what kind of density is that going to require? So they have a sense of potential impacts. Then based on that feedback, it's then go back and say, okay, you've selected whatever that is, cluster housing or townhouses or more rental units or whatever the conclusions have been, is then run some economic analysis of what are the cost benefit. So we made that clear in no uncertain terms. That's what our expectation is. It's going to be a challenge to see if we have, how much budget we have left to actually have Judy do that, because she did the analysis on presuming, developments at Winthrop School, at, where was the other site? At,
Essex Street.
Right, Essex Street. And I'm looking at those and going, well, those aren't going to be happening in my lifetime, unless they're 40Bs that we have no choice.
Yeah.
But the whole point was to have a choice, plot a course, and understand what the cost benefit would be.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that was it.
They give you an answer, or, do you?
Answer to what?
Well, you said these are what we would prefer you had, and as examples or something. Did they say they would have it ready for the meeting, or?
No.
They said they're out of the budget, and so.
Well,
part of the master plan
two things. So we basically say we can't bring these scenarios to the meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's not what people wanted.
Yeah.
Two, we could probably narrow down, based on the survey and the other meetings, roughly what people wanted in terms of,
Brian,
priorities.
are there copies of, what are you looking at? We don't,
That you have it right
You
there.
have it right in your hand.
Yep, it's this.
which page? The one on the,
The scenarios. There was the last page.
Scenarios,
Yeah,
that's
the
what-
scenarios, yeah.
we don't have the scenarios.
Yeah, her latter draft pulled that out.
Where was I? So, they don't have time to do the analysis of smaller, whatever those are, whatever they would be. They don't have time before this meeting Monday. And like Rick said, they have to look at what kind of budget is left to be able to do it anyway, or to do another scenario or two anyway. She did say that she could take the cottage one, basically cut it in half fairly easily down to a smaller development of 20 units. Or one of the other ones cut it in half, I think, but to look at a completely different scenario, say townhomes or what have you, would require, again, I don't think they've come back with us on exactly what they have left, but
Right.
it might require an upping of the budget if we wanted that, which I was a little upset with, in that, well, yeah, you spent budget on something we didn't want.
Yeah.
So.
Right. We made that very clear. There was, it was a scorched earth meeting.
I had to get a new phone.
So they're presenting this on Monday. That's what the forum is about on Monday?
They're presenting, yeah, they're
This
presenting.
without the
Without the
More or less, yeah, right, without the scenarios, yeah. Yeah, we can't go in there with those.
That's not gonna be very useful.
No.
Well,
And
not
I-
not for the end result, but the public understanding of what the body politic who responded to this said they want is important. We never, in our first master plan 14 years ago, we didn't do the financial analysis. We got a product similar to this plus recommendations of, specific zoning that the town should consider to address the needs that were expressed during that master planning effort. This time, I wanted to see, a cost-benefit analysis, say, well, if we pick this option, what are the costs to the town in terms of school impacts, infrastructure impacts, and tax revenue impacts. So that piece is going to be missing, but a presentation of what all the information that's been compiled and breaking it down and understanding, what did the public say wanted is important, because for us, this is really an education piece, and making sure that to the greatest extent possible, people who are involved or in future discussions, if we're discussing rental housing or housing for, seniors, people are going, where did you get that from? Because that's always the question. We'll go back and say, well, we did an extensive outreach and survey, and based on that, this is what we came up with. So this is plotting our future direction, future discussions of what we may be proposing.
Yeah, and all of it leads up to the idea of, okay, what are these concepts going to transition into relative to town meeting articles for zoning? That's the real end game that we're trying to end up with. And I think there were a lot of comments, if you read through the survey information relative to smaller scale kinds of developments. There's clearly a bigger demand for senior housing than we've heard before. Small scale homes, accessible homes, etc., are the kinds of things that it seemed to me like there are an awful lot of people interested in. And we've got some language in bylaws that relate to some of that, but not as much as people want.
So, given all of that, what's the format of this forum gonna be next Monday?
Basically, the report on, it's compiling all the information other than the financial analysis. It's compiling all the information, just kind of laying out where we are and what all that means, and what the survey results were, and
So people will be able to make comments from the audience and so on about what they think of this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they had initially suggested on the phone call that we push this meeting off, and I said, not a chance. They already, this meeting was supposed to be in when? March, I think?
Yeah.
Had it pushed off, so we said we can't push it off yet again.
But if
so.
they have more deliverables by pushing it off another
Well,
month?
They don't.
They don't, though.
Oh, that's what you learned, really.
This is a case of where you've got to keep your thumb on the consultant.
Yep. Okay.
This was all very easy. This is just collecting numbers and making tables, as opposed to thinking through things very carefully and evaluating what are often quite conflicting goals, and presenting that in a reasonable way.
Yeah, and it was cherry picking certain things that they heard coming out of the forum, which you were at in February, and then just plowing right into these financial scenarios, which,
Well, and I was surprised at that, given the number of focus groups they had. that they
Right.
should have heard the kind of conflicting scenarios and struggled with that more. But
Right.
it's as if
And
those
then-
didn't happen.
And then as they started to see survey results come in, because, you know, the majority of those survey results came in the first couple of weeks, right, of that survey. And I think they could easily tell that it wasn't trending towards what they were doing.
Yeah, I got I mean, I was at one of the
Yeah.
focus groups. I didn't feel it was very useful.
In what way? Just, I mean, the questions they were asking, or?
It's just how it was conducted. Where would you put this housing? Well, I'm not sure I want this housing. That doesn't matter. Where would you put it? So where would you put the little blocks? Well, it just wasn't organized in a way to try and get at the issue. It was as though they had pulled some script off of some place that said this is how you can, conduct focus groups, and you have people decide where they want to put, different types of housing on the map. When it wasn't clear that everybody even wanted that type of housing, or how many people did.
Right, cart before the horse.
Right.
So, but you're right, that's basically the end result is there's a conflict. People say, this is what they want smaller housing, they want, rental housing, they want housing available for seniors, all of which leads to density. And then they say, on the other hand, we want open space, and we don't like
We want
den-
lower taxes. We have the highest tax rate.
Well, yeah, I mean, who doesn't say that, right? But, according to the FinCom, we're on a track where eventually, we just don't have we're not producing the residential income, tax income to support the operations of our town. So unless we do something to correct that, then we'll just look at a continuation of tax increases and fee increases to support that. So that's the kind of discussion that we are going to have. And this is designed to lay the groundwork so that we have some objective, independent information, so that when we bring these topics up into the public forum, and we know that there'll be pushback no matter what we do, we can at least go back and say, hey, we went to the body politic, this is what they've told us they want us to be working on. And then you try and figure out how to weave your way through the thicket in terms of competing interests and desires.
I mean, in hindsight, it probably would have been best to have the survey first, right? Get as many people as we can to, answer those questions, and maybe those forums, maybe not, but then have that forum where we all had the maps and we were all talking about, and narrowed down what the survey had said, right? That townhomes, whatever it was, and have those be the main focus of it, and be like, okay, where would you put these in town?
I think we would have had to take more control over that after the survey to make sure that they did that at the forum.
Right.
Right. So we're going to have to do it on our own at some point.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is what planning boards do.
If you say so. What, did the FinCom have any suggestions as to how to solve the problem of increased taxation because of?
No, I don't,
Build bigger houses, invite industry and, other cash cows into the town.
Yeah, I mean, people want it, they want it both ways. They want more housing options that basically require more density, but they don't want density. I mean, it was funny because when we did, Peter, you remember when we did the master plan 14 years ago, we came up with cluster housing. Cluster housing was all the rage at the time because it was a way to preserve open space. Put whatever number of units, 10, 12 contiguous shared wall housing, and then preserve all the land around it. And
Did we get any cluster housing?
Well,
I don't think we
created,
did.
well, we created,
I don't know of a development that had.
no, we created the Open Space and Farmland Preservation Bylaw that was designed to do that, but the incentives are not sufficient for a builder. You know, we worked with Tom Ford, trying to get Tom Ford on a couple of occasions to consider this, and he just said the profits weren't there to make it, you know, viable. So the density was I think it was 1.5 units.
Yeah, it equates to about 1.5.
If you meet, you know, the requirements, you can put 1.5 units on a
Acre.
acre.
Yeah.
Well, that's not enough. You really need probably 3, maybe 4.
Well, that's, the cottage housing was
4.
Well, that's the cottage housing.
Yeah.
Bill, our big problem was, I believe, is that the whole affordable housing got conflated with, we were talking about cottage housing as a potential, and it got conflated with affordable housing.
Right.
And
Affordable, and there's affordable, and there's 40B affordable.
well, there's,
Right,
well,
right.
now we,
I call that.
so
right,
now we,
affordable.
we changed the term to financially accessible, because
Yeah.
if you use the word affordable, nobody knows what that means
Yeah.
unless you're well-informed. Visions are poor people, you know,
Section 8.
Section 8.
Section 8,
Right.
drug crazed, no, I mean, you know, homeless, you know, I mean, that's exactly what people think. Drug crazed, homeless people, ransacking their neighborhoods. When they, I mean, if you were at town meeting, when we proposed cottage housing, it was like, oh, I don't want those people in town, and, you know, I mean, it was just, it was really quite blatantly, ignorant and other terms that I won't use. So, we couldn't have a logical discussion about that. So we decided, hey, maybe we really need to sort of establish a public process and database about where are we, what are people saying we need, and then come back and say, hey, this is what you said you want. This is what we're working towards. Here's some examples.
You have to be a little careful, though, too, because, I mean, there's ebb and flow.
Oh, yeah?
How cities and towns develop. So everybody wants senior housing because there's a lot of seniors.
Yeah.
And 20 years from now, there won't be anywhere near as many seniors, but there'll still be lots of senior housing. So what's going to happen to that housing? You know, where we thought it was going to be a good financial arrangement because seniors don't use any services, the houses would more than cover their
Those
costs.
houses could become affordable housing units.
Then they could, but all of a sudden then, they won't cover their costs, right? Because then there'll still be fairly, relatively lower priced housing, and families will be living in them because the, 55 and over age restriction will vanish because that won't work anymore because that demographic has gone away.
I'm not too
And
worried.
taxes will rise.
I'm not too worried about that because our population has family size reducing. Every single census in a very big way. We're now, at like 2 people per family here in Hamilton? Used to be 2.5 the prior one. That's really significant. And we keep being told by demographers that family sizes are really dropping nationwide. To me, senior housing that may be designed for 2 bedrooms, that to me is a fertile population or stock of homes that has the ability to transition to smaller families over time.
And I think this generation of young people wants smaller
That too.
houses.
Right. Well, but all I'm saying is you build something for one purpose.
Yeah,
You can
no,
be sure it's going to be used
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
some other, once the next generation comes along.
that's always an important question to ask.
Well, yeah, that's why you see, these large estate homes that were built in the late 1800s, early,
Nobody
20th
wants them
century, right?
anymore.
Nobody wants them anymore.
Nobody wants them anymore.
Right. So then we passed the farmland,
Oh, the great estates.
Great Estates bylaw.
Nothing
while we're just chatting here for a minute, I'm coming late to the Green Meadows, okay? As I read through our bylaw, there's this thing that says marijuana establishment not allowed anywhere.
Retail.
Retail.
That's not clear. Look at what the BLS calls an establishment. Anything that makes, distributes, or sells products. Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah, retail.
if I was that attorney, I would say, for Abbott, I would have come in here and said, look, it says you can't put a marijuana establishment anywhere here. Look at the definition of an establishment. A place of any kind of business where goods are made, distributed, or sold. It's not retail. If you wanted retail, you should have said retail. Okay? But I'm just saying, we're gonna get, we're gonna
Actually-
see what happens. I'm not gonna talk to them about that.
Actually, he argued the opposite.
He argued that establishment, what?
He argued that he wanted the planning board to bring forth a special permit to allow medical marijuana processing, growing. And he said, well, you already have a bylaw that allows that, that allows,
Greenhouses.
no, the retail, retail marijuana law. He's like going, well, you could have this proliferating all over town. And we're going, well, it's retail and it's banned. So, I mean, everybody understood that.
I'm just saying, as I read that, it's not clear that's retail. The other thing is, I think the attorney's right. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission says these are industrial buildings. And a lot of them, some of them do have translucent roofs. And it is an industrial. If I called some friends in Colorado, I sent around that thing.
Yeah,
Is
we
it
we have an opinion from Don.
And it's just, I worry that, the first thing I would have said when these guys came before us is, do you want a variance? And they would have probably said, we don't need a variance. And then I don't know what the next thing would have been,
Well, we asked Donna to give us an opinion, and her opinion is that it's an agricultural use.
The definition of agriculture is that something that is grown, that can be used, eaten, whatever, plant and animal, and this is absolutely a growing business, an agricultural business. It fully meets the definition of agriculture.
So we've asked her for a more thorough analysis.
That's very,
and a
I'd like to see that.
And a written.
Because Abbott's attorney makes a very convincing case. With that,
No.
34
We're not gonna get into this right now. We can't.
I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to, and then there's this bottom line about what's an establishment too.
That's a whole
We
different issue.
have minutes to approve.
Let's see, we have two sets, one from February the, what is that, the 19th, and another set that I sent out today, which was from December 18th of 2018.
What are you, like, springing this stuff on us?
Yeah, I need to get some of this back work done.
Backwoods, back what?
Back work.
All set, I read it.
Yeah.
I have it.
Done it?
Yeah, I looked at it,
Which-
but I
which one is
can't, I
this?
wasn't here, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
His birthday, if I showed up here for the wife's birthday, that would.
Yeah, I was fine with this. I read it earlier too.
So, since I was here in December, listed as present, I move approval of the minutes of December 18th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments on February 19? I'll make a motion to approve the February 19th, 2019 minutes.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Great, thank you.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
Real quick, Open Space Committee's gonna make a tour of the recreation sites around town on Friday with 2 reps from the MAPC.
Okay, great.
A tour of what?
Huh?
Excavation sites?
No, recreation sites.
Recreation.
Excavations.
Not recreation marijuana.
Yeah.
That's,
All right, so there's a second on the
Smoking
table.
sites.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?